Okay, so milking machine basics, the cups. There you can see there's an air line and a milk line, and they go through this. And this thing, they don't use it in France, but it's very good because you get, and it costs a bomb, but you get a lot more consistent vacuum. So the milk will go through there, and the air here, and the two go into the one line there, and then they connect up onto that pipe, and there's a vessel there that they all go into, and from that they go out down the pipe down the bottom. Yeah, that's enough detail. And round into the milking pump, through this filter in there, up and the pipe, through that heat exchanger, that's that black thing with, and down into the milk vat. And in the other room, the vacuum comes from the other room. There's a pump there. Gauge up there, a blowout device, so the vacuum goes nuts. And then to clean, instead of, the water will be sucked up in this blue tub, and goes in through that stainless steel thing, through the pipe, and on the end of that, the milk line where the cups are. There's those jetters, you'll see the cups on those jetters. And so the water gets sucked in and it goes up into the cups and through the system. Okay. So first step is to get the milk that sits in this milking filter pipe arrangement. On reinstallation, make this pipe smaller and just have the milk vessel and that beside it over here. You lose a fair bit of milk out of it. And then we take the, see here's a milk filter, and you can see from goats it's clean. That'll be green with cows. And then we rinse it over here. We have to use, normally you'd rinse it with a cold water, but we have to do it with a hot water because the plumber's got the cold water tap all the way down there. And the only reason you would do that if you wanted to show 2 inches of arse crack, like a plumber does. Put the clean filter back in again. Look at the muscles of the goat farmer.
Just to make sure.
And these clamps, they're a bit fiddly to use at first, but they're really good for a number of reasons, because you end up with a very, very flexible modular system. It's easier to take stuff on and off and read.
For cleaning, if you've got an issue.
Okay, dispose of that milk. Now we are going to give the cups a bit of a wash. We have a bucket set aside for that purpose that we don't put on the ground. Anything with food and for plant hygiene, you try not to put it on the ground. It's not like bacteria is going to crawl up into the bucket, but it's because you touch the bottom of it and spread stuff around that way. Pathogens have have to be physically transferred either via spray or dirt, whatever. They don't float in the air like COVID, despite what Safe Food will try to have people believe. Because without that, you wouldn't have to fear uncertainty and doubt, which I thrive on. Okay, here's the goat farmer going to put some gloves on. I'll just pause that. So we're going to fill the wash tub. I normally add the chemical to the water, but the goat farmer does it differently. And we'll have all those measurements of how much to do. It's basically 15 ml of the alkaline mixture, the sodium hydroxide, to 10 litres of water. We're going to fill this tub up with hot water, very hot water, over 60 degrees, 70 degrees, and it's 5 litres per set of cups, so we're going to do 60 litres. So it is caustic, you've got to be very careful. It's an obligation to use it in Australia, France. They use other stuff. Running, and now at the end of this there's a clamp which allows more water to go through the system for rinsing and washing. Have that turned off so the milk doesn't go up through that black pipe when you're milking. Okay, so we do this for each one of the cups.
Kicked off, you know, you just clean the stuff under there. I generally also just make sure this is clean.
Especially if you used it for a week.
Yeah.
And there we go. The cups go in the jetters, so we do that all the way along. We tend to put them in that order there, otherwise you get weird crossover of hoses and stuff to deal with, and you will muck it up several times till you get the hang of it.
You leave one hanging.
And you leave one hanging, you get a long way along, and all of a sudden you're thinking, that's not right. You think, oh man!
So I always stand back here so you see go in front of it, you know, and then that way then you make sure that you don't miss them.
I'm sure you don't need to see this another 10 times, so stop recording.
It needs to be redrawn every now and then because if we run our finger on to see where the line is.
Not just if you can count the 10 litre increments there, so go and fill it, you adjust the amount of chemical you've put in there. You've got the correct amount of chemical. And then pour because we're very short on water, we use the water to clean the cups and the water we use to wash the udders, and any other water left from washing hands to do this. And basically there's a hole there, you put it through there, put it up, down the bottom. There. Okay, so before we're starting, we take this lid off. It's heavy, it's heavy. Put it out, put it away.
Okay, so
Alrighty, so we've got the leftover sanitizer water from the previous wash in these buckets. So that'll have some hydrogen peroxide, paracetic acid in there, which we use as a sanitizer because we don't want to put chlorine through the pumps. It's pretty nasty stuff. That's an approved sanitizer. Okay, turn her on. Check all the cups. Okay, we have a problem we can hear. There's a hose off on this one over here. I can hear. Now that's the pulsator up in there, which is what turns the vacuum on and off for pulsating the cups. You can see they're all pulsating now, and there's no air leaks. And you have to finish that bucket. That right there. Man, you do things differently. I do 2 buckets. That's about the amount. Take her up. There's a line on that drum, and just below that you stop because you overfill it. That's a major drama. Beyond the current scope of this discussion.
Because we fill those 20 litre buckets with more than the system, so that's why there's a show if you overflow.
And that there's a,
Sanitary trap.
what's that thing called again?
Sanitary trap.
Sanitary trap. And you can see there was a lot more water in that milk collection vessel. So there's a lot of water in that sanitary trap there. And if that fills up, there's a ball in a cage that goes up and blocks off so that air doesn't go up through the vacuum. So the water doesn't go up through the vacuum. So that's the major drama. You've got to stop the machine, take that gasket off one of those clips on there, and pull the ball down and start the process again. So it's just a rinse. You just want to rinse the milk from here. Clean that pipe. And oh, I've got water running everywhere here. Buckets under there. There's a valve on there. And we get the water. And we use it on the floor to clean up the floor. Of course, water's a precious resource here. Now I learnt my cheese making in the Waikato in New Zealand. And there's this brilliant device, the milk measurer, which is hooked in series in the milk line. And there's 3 positions here. So that's in the wrong position. That should be up. For washing. Oh, okay. Washing it goes up. For milk measuring, selecting seed, then it does the gurgle, have it to the side, and to let the water out, it goes downwards. And then you press the lid up the top, it comes out.
You just do that.
After each rinse or wash or sanitize, we open up that clip on there and let the water out down the bottom, and then there's a little other valve that lets the water out of the pipe. You've got to make sure that you turn the correct one. There, that one there, not the one up above that undoes the pipe.
Yeah, just a little bleed valve.
And when the water stops flowing, you turn it off.
And it's also just checking to make sure that the water is clear when it comes out of there, which means that everything is...
Okay, before we start the wash, just make sure the water's drained out of that sanitary trap. It comes out through that hose and into that drain there. Okay, into the blue tub. You take that out as well, so it can. Okay, so now we've got the alkaline wash going in through the red hose here, into the milking cup, and then this thing's getting washed in the up position, and eventually come into this tub. So we've got to keep an eye on this line over here. And you also hear it coming into here. And that's about the time when you've got 40 litres through, that's enough. And we lift that steel nozzle up. And
so we actually want the sanitary tap to fill partially, we do at the top of the milk vessel to get washed.
yeah, but there's a balance there, and that is too much because you run the risk of the ball getting stuck. With the blue broom, so you don't have to put your hand in there, across it, and you just brush. Milk fat, give it a good brush with it. And wear long gloves and run it across the body of it. It's splashing everywhere, so I'll turn it off and get the hell out of the way. You have to get the lid a good clean, inside and outside. And then you can let the water out down the bottom, and we use it, on, like I said, on the floor to clean. Chuck it around on the floor. Whatever pattern gets there. Now off the floor, York joint. Tilt the tub a little bit. Just got to get. You can look in there and right on the corner. You've got to watch it. There's a bit of a step around the bottom there. So you've got to make sure you get all the water and chemical out of there. And then you start filling it up with cold water. Oh no, today we're going to do an acid run. On Sundays we do an acid run. So we use acid chemical, and the chemical we use is 20 ml per 10 litres, so we'll be putting 120 ml in there with the hot water. There you go, that's just a red chemical. Put it in there, and always rinse that little cup so you don't accidentally touch it with your bare hands. And the goat farmer's a bit lax on PPE, she's finally putting it on. So the machine was turned off on the switch, go over, let the stuff out of here again. Right. Okay, so now we're going to do the acid, same thing, exactly the same thing, nothing really exciting to see. Same thing for the acid run, give it a clean. So now, use the cold water tap, see how low it is. That's why I can't do the milk filter on it here, because it'll hit the ground. And then fill up the tub with 60 litres of cold water and 150 ml So 25 mil, the range is 22 to 30 mil, or 22.5 to 30 mil per 10. EPAT Lab said that 25 mil is pretty good. They're sort of not wanting to flog too much chemical. It's bloody expensive, that stuff. So fill that up and then do the sanitizer run. No, you can't see it. Oh yeah, right, no.
Oh yeah, no, that's I think the truth is, can I shove that in there? So
You can do a little bit of a rinse in between the two chemicals,
So normally-
like Lyndall's doing there.
it would still be on.
Most people generally don't bother with that. I mean, it's ideal, but there's so little of the chemical really left in the lines to cause the action between the alkaline and acid. But it's ideal. But then you've got to get all that water out too.
Normally like it's still on. I haven't turned it off from the acid.
Normally she leaves it on after the end of the acid, does it? Oh, the whatever. Now this is the vacuum pump. Here. That's the vacuum. Motor down there. And this thing's a muffler. The noise and the control unit for the vacuum pump. There we go, she turned it off. Now, a couple of traps here. If you don't have vacuum on the machine, it can be because this thing here, this flap, isn't in place, and that'll cause a loss of vacuum. So then that drains out. Could have been knocked for some reason, or that lid sometimes can become dislodged if something funny's gone on, and it'll be loss of vacuum. So there are two things to check if you don't have vacuum in the system. Now with that hydrogen peroxide and paracetic acid, it's ideally, well in the documentation it says 5-minute contact time. Well, with chlorine at 200 parts per million it's only 2 minutes. That's a large reason why I don't use it in the cheese factory, because 5 minutes is a long time to wait to sanitise, because everything used has to be sanitised. So here we've put the hydrogen peroxide in the water and left it for 5 minutes, and now we'll run that sanitizer through the system and have 5 minutes of contact time through the system and in the vat. It's a bit of a boring, long process, but yeah, here we go. Okay, Palmer has to wash the sweat out of her eyes. Okay, see that adjustment, putting that in the wash mode. And we're starting to run out of battery on this camera. So I'll show you what you do here. So we just, when the water comes out, we just run it around and just basically try to keep it wet with the chemical over the last minute. And it means probably about 3 top-ups of running it through. So we'll put this steel sucker thing into the milk vat to run it through again. Suck the water out of the milk vat and out to the nozzle. We get some of the sanitizer and do the lid of the milk vat as well. And sanitizer is non-rinse. When you use it at the correct dilution, you don't have to rinse it off. Okay, so now we do another iteration to extend the time out through to the 5 minutes. Gets a bit boring. This Waikato will keep, you'll end up with drops of water and it doesn't dry properly. So we've found that one way of doing it is just to collect the water in the collection mode so it doesn't bubble all over the place. And then collect the water up, throw it in the subsequent sucks of the sanitizer through the system. Okay, we grab out half of the 5 litre container for washing the others and we fill the other half with water. So it's not too strong, it's just making use of water and because it's got the sanitizer in it. We'll top it up with the water later on. So always when you run this you want to stop, lift the nozzle out when it gets to just below that black line arrow. Otherwise you'll get that ball stuck in the sanitary trap. Then we collect up the water for the rinse in the morning. Let the water from the sanitizer run. Take the cups off. Hang them up. And it'll suck the water out of there. And the dairy, there is a standard on washing milking machines that says to run it for 2 minutes to suck the water through the system. We tend to leave it for longer to try to get all the water out. So when there's no more water coming through, and you'll see it on this hose there. And you see it not running through the hose anymore, you turn the machine off. Buckets, you have lost a little bit through the sanitary trap, and that's how you just top those buckets up to 60 litres, so you've got 60 litres of water. Now, milk filters been taken out. You've got to be very careful here not getting it dirty.
Not dropping it.
Yeah, but I managed to do it in my hands that. So you don't want to put it down anywhere because you put milk in there. Bit of a juggling act, you've got to work it out with your own physicality and how you do this. So that spring just screwed off with a filter on it, so now we'll do the reverse. Get that filter on.
I'm going to drop it now. I'm being recorded, I'm going to drop it now. I don't know if I've ever dropped it, but...
Okay, and then you fold in the top, screw it on there.